right, it's a short week. The Ducks are headed to Purdue on Friday here on The Fan, so Dan Lanning's interview this week will be tomorrow at 4 o'clock. He was asked about the 12-man penalty, whether or not he did that on purpose.
Yeah, I thought he'd kind of brush it off, but, he answered it without answering it with a little smile on his face.
Much of the commentary world has decided and struck you as a genius, Stan, for the 12-man penalty and declared that it was intentional. Was it indeed intentional to induce the throw one-on-one against Jabbar in that spot?
It wasn't one-on-one. We actually had a safety on top, so there was so it's called dog. It's when you play, but he wasn't in extremely tight coverage, but he was in dog coverage where he had safety on top of him. And there was a timeout before that. We spent an inordinate amount of time on situations. There's some situations that don't show up very often in college football, but this is one that obviously was something that we have worked on. So you can see the result.
Yeah. Hence, yeah, we did it on purpose.
Well, with that, the NCAA has already commented. The guy's name is Steve Shaw. He is the NCAA Secretary Rules Editor.
Mm-hmm.
Hot position.
Oh, absolutely. Got to edit those rules on the spot.
He told Yahoo Sports that the NCAA Football Playing Rules Committee is actively engaged in examining the play for possible action.
Yeah.
They said that the Big Ten crew handled the play appropriately, but the Rules Committee is discussing a way to address the play.
Yeah.
Basically, they don't want the
Loopholes.
penalized team to
lose time like that.
No, well, they will look at any rule where if a team commits a penalty, it favors the team penalized.
Yes.
They do not want that.
No.
And I can totally see why they don't want that. And they will likely change this like right away. It's similar to the Kenny Pickett slide.
Yeah.
They can jump right in and say, okay, no more. And then basically what they're going to say is the officials will just be allowed to put the time back on the clock.
And that's what they do in the NFL. And the NFL's had a couple of loopholes like this that the hoodie and like Vrabel. Like
they had a little battle over it.
Yeah, they've done this. And, look, it's a loophole. And as long as there's a loophole, people are going to try to do it. And I'm with them. Very smart on the part of Dan Lanning. Let's also not act like that's like the reason why they won the game. I mean.
Well, it sure helped.
But Ohio State wasn't trying to,
it was a nice button to push in that moment for sure.
Yeah,
well, and the other thing.
They weren't trying to throw the ball deep on anyone, but it made sure that they didn't.
Well, but the other thing on that play is if they get so what'd they get? They got 5 yards. They lost 5 yards and 6 seconds or 4 seconds.
4 seconds.
Yes.
They traded 5 yards for 4 seconds.
So the question is how many yards would you trade for 4 seconds? In other words, if Ohio State got
Well, if it was a 15-yard penalty, you wouldn't do it because then they go at that point Ohio State just kicks the ball.
They're back at field goal.
What if they got an 8-yard completion?
It's 50-50.
It's futile because they're going to take they're going to decline the penalty and take the 8 yards.
The bottom line is, and this is where the NCAA is right, it's where the NFL was right to close a couple of these loopholes. Getting a penalty should not benefit you. Plain and simple.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And if it's there, I also don't. I really don't think it's bad sportsmanship or cheating or anything to exploit a loophole that is there. But I think it's fine if they close the loophole.
Let me ask you this: like on the interception that was or wasn't. Now that you look at it, looks like it was at the beginning. Ohio State runs up to the ball and makes sure you get a playoff. The whole reason teams do that, happens all the time, is you don't want to give anyone a chance to look at something and say, hey, it should be reviewed. And once a ball is snapped, then it's no different.
And people leverage these rules where you're giving something up all the time.
Absolutely.
If a DB gets beat deep, he'll grab the receiver to make sure he doesn't give up a touchdown. Yeah. He'd rather have the 15 yards. If you're in a spot you're going to punt and you maybe want to try to induce like someone jumping off sides, you let the clock run out on delay a game after hard count. You take the penalty and then you punt. Like this happens all the time.
Injuries, which is obviously something that they've battled with.
Yeah, the fake injury thing is big right now.
It's big, yeah, and yet teams do it. I mean, dude,
Ole Miss.
Everyone's done it. Oh yeah, the Ole Miss guy. That was like the greatest.
Well, and they flashed a graphic now in their last game that says they've done it 29. They've had 29 injury timeouts in the last 3 games or something like that, which leads the NCAA. Someone tracked it.
Well, and now in the NFL, they've done stuff with the 10-second runoff, man. Like, and that can be brutal because with the injury thing, I mean, we've seen it. If you get a guy that's seriously hurt at the end of a game and you don't have a timeout and he literally cannot get off the field, let's say the imagine that, right? Did you watch the Aiden Hutchinson El Snapo.
Yeah,
that's horrific.
I saw the highlight of it.
Yeah, it's
I wasn't watching that game because they were kicking the crap out of.
Yeah, they were beating him down. I was actually watching that live, and I couldn't figure out what had happened. I was like, dude, it didn't look bad because they didn't show it. And I was like, what are they doing? And then I looked on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, that's different, you know. And I don't know if this is true or not, but on the clip that's going around on Twitter, I don't know if it's that or not, but boy, it sounds like you can hear the of the leg. And I'm like, God, I hope that's not the real thing. Anywho, point is, imagine that being a Super Bowl, right? And you get a team that has something like that, where Aiden Hutchinson snaps his leg. He obviously cannot get off the field. Can't do it. If you don't have a timeout, that is a 10-second runoff. You could lose a game on a player of yours snapping his leg in half. But that's what they've decided to do because, you know, the fake injury thing in order to stop clock. So, you know, people exploit things all the time. You try to close loopholes. And the fact that people are making a big deal out of this or trying to make a big deal out of it, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's all grow up a little bit.
Well, it's overblown at this point.
Exactly.
Because Rick Neuheisel said it today. He said, you know, defensive coaches know all of that stuff.
Exactly.
Let's not act like Dan Lanning's the only guy that knows that.
Yeah.
Still
a nice
and
little
by
thing,
the way,
you know?
the other thing about Duck fans, calm down. Who cares what other people think about that play?
Yeah.
I mean, Duck fans get so triggered by people saying, "Oh, well, that's not within the spirit of the." Who cares?
Rob,
it helped them win.
I had 13. I went back and counted this. I had 13 people send me either a 4-second video clip or the still image of the push off on the offensive PI, and we're so angry because I said I didn't love the call. I said, I thought you should have let him play. I don't like at the end of the game when there's marginal calls. But I also said, I think it's a 50-50 call. I think go either way. I don't like to see those called. It doesn't matter. Like, it's one man's opinion. I was like, I wouldn't have liked that call if they had made it against you. Just, I don't like those when that can be called so many different times. And you're so right. So many people, what are you going to say about that, Suke? I'm like, what does it matter? What does it matter if me or Joe Klatt or anyone else thinks that was or was a bad call? But it is fascinating how we definitely get into that. And I think Duck fan is they're a little sensitive when it comes to that.
You think Lanning shouldn't have admitted it? Would that change? Would that have changed anything?
Nah.
I appreciate that he did.
I thought he wouldn't. I thought he would be a little coy about it, but you know, the little smile, and he knew that, you know, it was going to be hard to deny that. So, you know.
The fact that he just admitted we spent a ton of time on this and there's very few opportunities to use something like this, but it presented itself, like that seems pretty reasonable.
Well, it makes me wonder what else they got up their
Where are
sleeve.
there other flaws in the system?
Yeah.